Russia is in trouble. Russia's military was once feared globally, but now it's crumbling in Ukraine.
Страны, которые потеряли эти территории, прежде всего Польша, спят и видят вернуть. В этом смысле только Россия могла быть.
The conflict has exposed deep-rooted weakness in Russia's armed forces, shattering pre-war perceptions of its military prowess. How did a former superpower with vast natural resources end up in such dire straits? Corruption, inadequate training, and equipment shortages have left Russian soldiers without proper combat readiness. Now, it's nearly impossible to get accurate, precise data on this, but estimates put the number of casualties sustained by Russia versus those of Ukraine at somewhere between 3-to-1 and 6-to-1. This rate of personnel loss raises serious questions about Russia's capacity to sustain a prolonged conflict. Russia has managed to increase production of certain military equipment, but this output relies heavily on foreign components and technology, showing that Russia is vulnerable to international sanctions and supply chain disruptions.
I think it's really important that he not have any breathing room to continue to do the god-awful things he's continuing to do.
Unable to achieve a decisive victory, Russian forces are now engaged in a war of attrition, focused on outlasting Ukraine rather than overwhelming it. That is far different than the original projections that said Russian troops could make it to Kyiv in just the first week of the conflict. As the myth of Russia's military might unravels, so does its ability to project power and shape world events. This decline in hard power has already reshaped the geopolitical landscape and is symptomatic of deeper systemic issues within the country. Back at home, Russia's economic crisis is unfolding silently within its borders, despite its massive landmass and abundant natural resources. Since 2014, Russia's economic trajectory has spiraled downward, with the annexation of Crimea triggering Western sanctions that have isolated the country from global financial markets and restricted access to crucial technologies. These sanctions have significantly shrunk Russia's economy, with GDP growth stagnating and inflation soaring. Reuters reported that Russia's inflation had hit 9.5% in 2024, with interest rates all the way up at 21%. Of course, interest rates and inflation remain a problem around the world, even in the US, where nearly half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, even some of those making over 150 grand. Normally, they would make up that difference with their investments, but the biggest money managers like Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, and JP Morgan all expect US stocks to fall well short of their historical returns. To balance those losses, JP Morgan recently declared that 2025 would be the year of normalization for alternative assets. One alternative asset in particular, the contemporary art market, has even outpaced the S&P 500 across the last 30 years. And with Masterworks' art investing platform, you can invest in this incredible asset class without needing millions of dollars or art expertise. Diversifying your own wealth into fine art is easy with icons like Banksy or Picasso. And Masterworks, the sponsor of today's video, has over 450 paintings in their collection, invested in by 67,000 plus people from different backgrounds and income levels. But it's not just about diversifying or collecting. Masterworks already has 23 sales to date, with realized net annualized returns like 17.6, 17.8, and 21.5%. Not inclusive of those not yet sold. In fact, Masterworks' last sale was a Basquiat painting in 2024, which sold for $8 million after 1,398 days. For every $10,000 someone invested in that Basquiat, they took home over $2,600 in profit after fees. As the art market looks to make headlines again, Masterworks offerings can sell out quickly. But to celebrate the new year, my subscribers get priority access by using the QR code on the screen, the link in the description, or by going to masterworks.art/Aaron Watson. Investing involves risk. Past performance is not indicative of future returns. See important disclosures at masterworks.com/CD. The restrictions on technology transfers caused by sanctions have been particularly damaging to the oil and gas sector, the backbone of Russia's economy. Without access to advanced extraction technologies, Russia will struggle to maintain its position as the second largest energy exporter in the decade ahead. Despite possessing an abundance of oil, gas, precious metals, timber, and other commodities, these natural resources have not translated into a diversified, resilient economy. The country finds itself increasingly reliant on raw material exports, with oil and gas accounting for 45% of its federal budget revenue. But domestic manufacturing has not been able to answer the call, resulting in shortages of many essential items and a decrease in living standards for many Russians. So now, even the most optimistic forecasts are for long-term stagnation. Without significant reforms and economic diversification, the country risks falling further behind its global competitors. Innovation and investment in non-resource sectors remain low, with less than 10% of Russia's exports involving value-added manufacturing. There is a direct connection between economic strength and military capabilities. And Russia's struggles in modernizing its armed forces is a direct result of this shortcoming. Building a more diversified economy would require overcoming entrenched interests of oligarchs and creating a stable political environment conducive to foreign investment and innovation. Instead, Russia has become reliant on one trading partner. China has emerged as Russia's critical lifeline.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, they have evolved from a partnership of equals into one of Russian dependence. The scale of this shift is evident in trade figures and key economic sectors. China now dominates Russia's imports of critical components like semiconductors, while also becoming Russia's largest oil customer. In 2023, trade between the two countries reached $240 billion, with Russian oil exports to China increasing by 24% compared to the previous year. China now represents 1/3 of Russia's total trade. That means China can use economic leverage over Russia, particularly in the energy sector. While Russia relies heavily on Chinese oil purchases, China has negotiated significant discounts on these imports. Since Russia's options are limited due to Western sanctions, they're forced to accept unfavorable terms. And yet, even with lower prices, the Power of Siberia pipeline, which delivers Russian crude to China, falls short of replacing Russia's former European export volumes. Russia risks becoming economically and politically subordinate to China, with its decisions increasingly influenced by Beijing's interests. China loves the lower energy prices, and they're happy to sell dual-use products and military technology. However, they have enough problems at home, and they do not want to worry about supporting a struggling Russian state. And the destabilization caused by Russian aggression doesn't help China on the global stage. And as we look at the few other partnerships that Russia has been able to maintain, we do see a larger pattern. They're connecting with other isolated states, which brings its own geopolitical and security implications. After China, Russia's two primary partners for military cooperation are North Korea and Iran. Once a nuclear power capable of projecting force worldwide, Russia now relies on these countries for critical military aid. North Korea has provided 11,000 containers of military supplies, including millions of artillery rounds and short-range ballistic missiles. Iran has supplied over 3,700 Shahed 136 kamikaze drones, which Russia has used extensively to attack Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Additionally, Iran has shared manufacturing techniques, enabling Russia to produce these drones domestically. The European Union has presented evidence that Iran provided at least 400 short-range ballistic missiles to the Russian armed forces. All this military equipment has been essential to allow Russia to continue to slog through this protracted military conflict. And in June of 2024, Russia and North Korea formalized their military cooperation through a mutual defense pact, further solidifying the alliance between these two countries. North Korea sent troops to go fight in Ukraine, but it seems like they may have gotten a little distracted while they were there. These alliances certainly provide short-term benefits, but they could have lasting consequences for Russia's place in the global order. Since February of 2022, over 1 million Russians have fled their homeland. The majority of those departing are between 18 and 35, representing Russia's young, educated workforce. The sectors most affected by this brain drain will inevitably be technology, finance, and creative industries, precisely the areas that Russia would need to diversify its economy away from oil and gas. The decline of human capital is accompanied by a significant outflow of financial resources. In 2022, an estimated $30 billion left the country, further limiting the government's ability to invest in critical infrastructure and development projects. The situation bears similarities to the post-Soviet brain drain, but potentially more severe because in a globalized world, there's never been an easier time to move around if you have skills and capital. When you pair this with Russia's brutal demographics, the future looks bleak. Russia is a rapidly aging society, and many of its young men are fleeing the country or dying in Ukraine. Each successive Russian generation is smaller than the one preceding it. While a similar scenario in France and the UK have made it difficult for them to fund their social services, Russia's government tends to be far less generous with its welfare programs. Yet, a smaller generation of young people to consume Russian goods means the country will remain reliant on exports to have any hope of growth. And the decline of the Russian population will likely be accelerated by the next geopolitical moves on the horizon. Russia's actions have triggered significant shifts in global alliances and security dynamics. Sweden and Finland's applications for NATO membership mark a historic departure from neutrality, directly responding to Russian aggression. This expansion strengthens NATO's position in Europe and reflects a broader trend of increased defense spending among member nations. NATO countries like Germany are racing to increase defense spending to over 2% of their GDP. In just 2022, NATO countries collectively increased their military expenditures by approximately 20%. Turkey and France's defense industries in particular have grown considerably. So the Western Front is draining resources, and to the east, China is increasingly calling the shots in their partnership. Here's what makes this moment different than other historical periods of Russian weakness. The technology gap is widening. While countries like India, Turkey, and South Korea race ahead in semiconductors, AI, and advanced manufacturing, Russia can barely maintain its existing industrial base. Even in energy markets, Russia's traditional power base is slipping. The EU has successfully diversified its gas supplies. China knows it has Russia over a barrel and demands steep discounts. And new suppliers like Qatar and the US are eating into Russia's market share. This creates a few potentially disruptive scenarios for the 2030s. First, in addition to being ensconced as China's junior partner, Russia may also find Beijing making territorial claims on Siberia. Russian control and settlement of these vast territories took centuries to lock in. The Trans-Siberian Railway was only completed in 1916 and was crucial for cementing Russian control over these territories. China is looking for better access and control over the Northern Sea Route, which is a shipping route through the Arctic Ocean along the northern coast of Eurasia, primarily running through Russian waters. They might make a deal to save face, but what could Russia do to say no to its primary customer and military arms supplier? Additionally, what if groups within Russia see sufficient weakness to try breaking away? There are several republics within the Russian Federation that used to be independent and could be again. Dagestan and Chechnya in the Caucasus would be likely candidates. So could Tatarstan in the borderlands near Kazakhstan. And those groups actually have the highest birth rates of any of the nationalities living within Russia currently. Regardless, the days of Russia as a superpower aren't just over, they're never coming back. In the emerging multipolar world, Russia's poised to play more of a spoiler than shaper of global events.